So a lot of people have the question, should you have a trust or a will, and do you have enough money to have a trust? Well, I've got that answer for you in today's video because this is the Medina Retirement Planning Channel where I hope you know it so you don't blow it. My name is Victor Medina. I'm a certified financial planner, but more importantly for this video, I'm actually a practicing estate planning attorney and a certified elder law attorney, which is a special designation to help people who are doing their retirement planning and they're a little bit older, but they gotta make sure that their legal ducks are in a row. So today's video is gonna be talking about whether or not you should have a will or a trust. And before we get into that, I'm going to tell you right now that the answer is yes to both. And we really have to understand what these tools are to understand whether or not we should have one over the other, or even if we should be deciding between the two. Now, for you to understand which one you need to have or why you need to have both, you need to understand what each is, and then we can kind of talk about why you need both in your plan. A will is a document that you sign, and most people think about kind of the reading of the will when somebody passes away and they go in and there's a big pomp and circumstance.
All my assets, both liquid and otherwise, I leave in their entirety to Marta Cabrera. My entire ownership of Blood Like Wine Publishing, I leave in its entirety to Marta Cabrera. The copyright of its catalog, likewise, I leave in its entirety to Marta Cabrera.
This actually never happens that way. But the will is a document that controls your assets when you die that you own in your individual name. But it doesn't cover a lot of different things that you might own and how it gets transferred. For example, a will does not cover any jointly owned assets. So you have an asset that is now owned in two different names. For example, if you had a bank account and that bank account was in your name and your daughter's name, or your name and your spouse's name, the will wouldn't control that in most cases. If you have an IRA, an individual retirement account, or a 401k, those are accounts that are what are known as beneficiary designation accounts. They're also not covered by a will. Neither are as life insurance. So you can see that while a will is important to have, it actually wouldn't cover a lot of the different assets that you probably want to transfer when you pass away. And so what do you do with those? Well, sometimes you rely on the contractual provisions, but what we actually recommend is that you create a revocable living trust while you're alive. Now, what is a revocable living trust and why should you have one? Well, you might want to think about a revocable living trust as a sort of a suitcase. You kind of carry the suitcase around, and it's something that you've used to organize your stuff, so your stuff is inside of the suitcase. It makes it really easy to carry that around. And for example, if you were to get incapacitated, you'd have instructions for who could pick up that suitcase and help you manage your affairs. It would be called a disability trustee. And when you pass away, in order to make sure that somebody was following your instructions, you would have a successor death trustee. They could pick up the suitcase and they could carry it around. So a trust is a form of an organizational tool. And once we understand that it's really not driven by how much money you have, then we start to recognize that the use of a trust is not based on your net worth. So we think that everyone should have a revocable living trust because it's a superior way of organizing your stuff to make sure that you have everything where you need it to be, and then you follow the rest of the instructions. And we can do all kinds of things with trust that you can't do with the will in terms of making sure that things are held privately. A will is a public document. A trust is a private document. We can do some planning to help things go beyond one generation. So, for example, if you had your bank account that was a payment on death, or if you had an IRA with a designation, if you named the trust in there, we could go multiple layers. It could just go to your kids and then your grandkids after that. So trust is a more robust planning document, and it typically doesn't cost a lot more. At least in our office, it doesn't. If you're doing planning with us, we actually charge the same whether you want a will-based plan or a trust-based plan. And then once we explain to you what the difference between the two is, you realize, hey, I want a trust-based plan. If it costs the same, that's the better document. Now, when I say to you that you need both, when the answer to the question is, do you need a will or a trust, and the answer is yes, here's the reason why. Well, a trust is a very convenient document for you to use, a vehicle for you to be able to organize and carry your stuff around and make sure you've got an efficient transfer when you pass away. We also want a safety net in case we missed anything. And that safety net is in the form of a will. Everyone should still sign a will. But the way that we do it in our office is that we take that will and we point everything in that will to the trust that we've created. That way we have these two things working together. And what we basically say is, hey, if something didn't get into the trust during our lifetime, take the will and then pour it into the trust. And so that's why we call it a pour over will. It pours over anything that you missed put in your trust during your lifetime, it puts it into the trust when you pass away. So you actually need both of these. Now, there are additional advantages to having a trust. For example, you can avoid probate for assets that are owned inside of a trust. You can create creditor and divorce protection for what you're leaving behind for your kids. There's all kinds of really impressive things that you can do with a trust that, again, have nothing to do with your net worth. We're not talking about saving taxes, and we're not talking about, in fact, there's no operating fees for the trust. It's not like a thing that you have to file annually. So it's really not on the basis of how much money you have, but the goals that you have for your planning. So if you want to make things efficient for the people that you leave behind, where you're basically making it an easy set of instructions for them to follow, they don't have to involve themselves with probate, they have immediate access to that money. By the way, in New Jersey, a trust also avoids a nasty tax lien that freezes your assets. So if things are owned in a trust, they don't go subject to that tax lien. So if you want this sort of easier road for the people that you leave behind, you'll use a revocable living trust to organize everything, and you'll still have a will, that's that pour-over will, in order for you to be able to transfer the stuff into that got missed along during your lifetime. Now, if you do create a trust, the last piece of advice that I have for you is it's really important that you put the stuff in the suitcase while you're still alive. Unfortunately, if you need to use the will, you're back in probate for that. If you want to avoid probate, you have to have the stuff inside of your trust when you're alive. We call that funding or transferring title to the trust, and it's a very important step. Because the trust is not a magic document. It only works for the stuff that's in there. We want to make sure everything's in there while you're still alive. So the answer to the question, should you have a trust or a will, is yes, you should have both. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button and smash those subs and like buttons off of there. And stay tuned because we've got other great videos for you. Just watch the next one that's coming up on here. Catch you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, it's Victor. If you liked that video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you can get alerted anytime we post new content. In addition, we've got some other great videos for you to check out as you go on your retirement planning journey.